Today we have the pleasure of welcoming back Nadine Artemis, who is the founder of Living Libations. It's a brand that we carry on BSC, and it was such an interesting conversation because we spoke about the skin's microbiome as well as the mouth, this body, your gut, all that stuff. She kind of made it really easy to understand what it was. And then we also really got into essential oils, which was, I guess, her passion. She's been studying it for so many years. So really cool to discover essential oils and kind of break. I feel like I've heard a lot of negative talk around essential oils, and she kind of broke that train of thought, or like the myths that were kind of around it for different
Demystified it a
reasons.
little bit.
Yeah, demystified it, exactly. So that was really cool, and it's just nice to speak with somebody who's so passionate about overall well-being, health, skin, all that stuff, and also just a very different approach than what we're used to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, very different approach and very interesting approach. And I think that, I mean, it's essential oils are not new, obviously been around forever and forever, but to understand that the power that they have on the body, but not just from a outside perspective of application internally, but also in the mental and well-being component.
Yeah.
They have so many powers and properties. The problem, I think, or the challenge that we have is understanding what is real essential oil and what is fake essential oil. And she talked about that. So we're not going to tell you everything, but she talked about that because there's a lot of things on the market that are fake and that have no real benefits and actually could do the opposite. It could
Yeah,
be more
counterintuitive.
dangerous. And really to understand the power of looking for something that's really pure and understanding how to use it. It's very good. She also wrote a book called Renegade Beauty, which she's going to send us a copy, and I'm very excited to read it because there's so much in there that, I mean, what we learn in our society is what we are told through different channels of
Yeah.
media, parenting, society, the whole thing. But she has this whole book which she brings, which she's published, that really talks about essential oils from a different perspective. And I'm really looking forward to reading that because I think there's so much knowledge that you can gain from understanding things more from somebody who's really spent their life dedicated to studying it and the science behind it and stuff. That excites me. I think it's very cool. So I'm looking forward to reading that. It was a great episode. So welcome, Nadine.
Nadine, welcome back to the podcast. We're so happy to have you back again. And also Happy New Year, which is so exciting.
Happy New Year
2025.
too.
Thank you, thank you. We're so happy to have you. I'm excited for today's conversation. The first thing we really wanted to get into was the skin's microbiome. It's spoken about a lot, and sometimes there's not really a full understanding of what it is. So we really wanted to ask you, what is the skin's microbiome, and how do you, like, what's your strategy when creating products to protect and keep the skin's microbiome very healthy?
Yeah, so it kind of newer to science is the microbiome, even though, I mean, it's as old as all things on the planet. And about 20 years ago or so, we started understanding more about the gut microbiome. Contrast that to the 80s where we thought the stomach was a sterile environment. And so it's really expanded. And what we also understand now is, yes, our cells and cellular health is so important, and we have billions of cells. And we also equally have billions of bacteria in our body. And as not so fun as gross as it may sound, is we are literally host to a bacterial banquet. And we want those bacteria to be like, there's beneficial bacteria, and then there's pathogenic bacteria and bacteria dysbiosis. So we actually want the bacteria, the healthy bacteria. And then a lot of what's sort of modern, from glyphosates to pesticides in the soil to all of that, is extincting, if that's a word, species within our gut microbiome. So there's the proliferation of just like the bacteria, and then there's like obviously strains and types and families and all that kind of stuff. And so our diversity of species in our gut and everywhere in our bodies is diminished and not as diverse because of things like antibiotics and all of that. So the gut microbiome is what a lot of people know and understand a bit, and that's obviously major. It's essential to our living, and it's connected to all the systems like endocrine, digestive, immune. And then our skin is, besides, holding us all together, I like to think of it as the moist envelope of the soul. It is an innate part of our immune system. So the skin is a huge part of our immunity, and our skin has this microbiome that is obviously connected to the gut microbiome because everything in the body is connected, but it's also just functions a bit separately. And then other kind of key microbiome areas would be like ear, nose, throat, oral microbiome, and the yoni microbiome for women. And then on the skin microbiome, it's sort of different in different areas. So our armpits going to have a totally different microbiome than our face. And like the palms of our hands are very low activity on the microbiome front. So that's sort of the setup. And then so much of the chemicals that are in skincare these days really disrupt the microbiome. Or really many approaches to our just whole hygiene, even with oral care, like synthetic alcohol mouthwash, popular for 50, 60 years. It is messing with the mouse microbiome because it's mutating the microbiome in there. And so then we're not having that diverse species, and the species help keep the other species in check. So for example, like strep, it's pretty much in everybody's throat, but for some people it's more of an issue. And researchers and scientists feel that it's because we're missing the bacterial buddies that help to keep other bacteria in check. Just like H. pylori it's probably in most people's guts, but for some it's more of an issue. So when we have things on the skin like eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, dandruff, those are all disruptions in the microbiome, which is different than how we sort of approached it since like the 1960s when Clinique created skin type. And there was a lot of hype around that, and not all of that's really genuine, especially if we don't understand the microbiome. So when there are flare-ups and activities that disrupt the skin, there is a disruption to the microbiome. And things that we're putting on topically, we want to be like microbiome friendly. We don't want to disrupt the bacteria because the bacteria is doing the job. So it's helping us with acne. It deals, this part's kind of gross, but it deals with the sebum and some of the exfoliation, so to speak, because it's a bit of an ecosystem and a food supply. Like the skin is like the soil. And so we can't, as much as we think we want to just chemical peel and strip away the stratum corneum and use the surfactants to just polish. It's an ecosystem, and it's not, just going to be static. And so it's a dynamic thing. And so we have to allow the bacteria to be the beautician. And so all skincare should really take care of that microbiome. And that's where, even with modern dermatology, some of the solutions just don't make sense anymore. Because with cortisol or antibiotics topically, it's a major disruption to the microbiome, and you're not getting to the root of the problem. It may have a temporary solution, but then we're layering on more and more issues that can really create such a catch-22 for the skin, and then people can kind of be in this cycle for a few years.
Interesting.
So it could be products, but it can also be, could it be environmental? Also just the pollution, stresses.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd say deeper than that, it could be food, right? Or like if you have a lot of blackheads around your nose, there probably is some kind of congestion in the colon. And a lot of us now are aware of like hormonal acne around the chin is the liver's a bit congested because it's been dealing, so it can't process the hormones as well at that time of month. Okay. For some examples. And so, so there can be environmental, but generally we're looking at really the topical, which is kind of an environmental issue that we're creating for ourselves, and then food and diet or whatever. Mm-hmm. Which is different for everybody, right? So some people could be great with dairy and some it's congesting them. So you have to that's very individual.
It's personal, I think,
I want to know, what are some key ingredients that are really good for protecting the microbiome that you use, that you think are like everybody should be having in their routine?
Well, the good first, you just don't want to use things that disrupt it, and so none of the ingredients we have are disrupting it. And then the essential oils, what's so fascinating about them is most people just think they like smell good and then they're added to products as an afterthought to make it like, oh, have it smell like real lavender instead of like synthetic lavender or whatever, fragrance perfume realms that people get into, or manufacturers get into. But what I've always loved about the essential oils is they're just so multifaceted that yes, they have that aromatic quality that's really sort of bar none to anything like on the planet, where you're getting that juice of the plant and you can really just inhale it and smell it and enjoy it. And those molecules, even if you couldn't smell, the molecules are still going to travel up into the brain, into the hypothalamus, and still affect, the release of different molecules in the body and that kind of thing. However, in products, you've got the smell, but they're also part of the architecture. They are an active ingredient, and they are adding to the stability and the antimicrobial balance. So they're also used in that way to architect a very strong, lasting, stable product, especially when every single ingredient is at peak quality. And then what's also super cool is that essential oils, so we're speaking generally because they're all very individual, but we can make some general claims. They're all antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal,
All of
and
them?
yeah, they all have varying degrees. Now, clove, you might pick over lavender for some things, because that's going to be a little bit more antibacterial, but you don't always need that antibacterial. I'm just saying, so they all have their different skills. Many, many, many of them are anti-inflammatory. Most of them are going to help the lymph system. Most of them are going to really speed up. They're known as vulnaries. They speed up healing. They speed up the regeneration. They're cellophilic, meaning they will get the cells going. They help to diminish the enzymes that break down collagen and elastin, and they help to regenerate collagen quicker. So sometimes we're looking for all these answers, and they've been here for thousands of years for skincare.
Yeah.
What's also super cool about them is that they're quorum sensing inhibitors, QSI for short. And what that means is that they're able to basically work with the beneficial bacteria, clean up the pathogenic bacteria. So it's like such the solution for our time, because they can lend this antibacterial solution, but they're not like an antibiotic, meaning anti-life. And antibiotics, while they are needed for many things, we definitely have them far too prevalent in our society, like what's allowable in milk or animal feed. So we're getting too many, but they have their time and place. However, they're kind of indiscriminate, and they will just sort of level, like they're kind of like scorched earth for the whole microbiome. And the cool thing about essential oils, there's like whatever intelligence is there from the extract. And again, it can work with the beneficial bacteria, tidy up the pathogens, but not decimate the whole microbiome. Mm-hmm. So it's an amazing solution. And even in Europe, when there's, bigger agriculture practices where they don't want to keep feeding the antibiotics to the chicken, because they're also seeing like it kind of helps the food supply, and then it doesn't because of all the side effects. And so for decades now, they've been using things like rosemary and oregano in the feed in place of antibiotics, because they're able to be antiviral and antimicrobial, but without decimating the whole gut of the chicken's microbiome. Or the whole
They're
microbiome
doing that in Europe now? They're doing that in
for
Europe?
a while. Yeah.
Okay.
So just to give an example of like the power, the potency, that they are these active ingredients, and yet they are what we need, because again, it's not like putting benzoyl peroxide on a zit, because it's going to then, disturb the whole stratum corneum, the lipid barrier, and you've got that chemical, and it's like then you've got a bit of a catch-22 because then this thing's dried out, you got dried out patch, so you just use the essential oils, which can be the doodabs, which is the family that we've created of blends that really are for those super active on the spot treatments where, acne, rosacea, scarring, really key area when they come in handy is when there's a new scar, and you would just first use a doodab straight up without even oil, and then that will seal it, heal it, clean it, antibacterial, antiviral. Once it's sealed, then you would add something stronger like a soothsayer serum or a doodab to a serum or any of the serums, and then that will then get that keloid softened and really, really amazing. So good for scars, for old scars, new scars, preventing scars. Yeah.
There's so much in nature that we don't necessarily tap into, right?
Yeah,
That's available to us. But I mean, not all essential oils are equal, right? Because there's a
exactly.
lot about that on the market, like essential oils, but are they really essential oils? What's their base? So what's your
Yeah.
thoughts around that, the quality of the
I have
essential?
lots of thoughts on that. And
Yeah.
that is, that's what I've been studying since 1990 and working with my distillers since like 92. And I wanted to seek out what was pure because initially, I'm just like, a teen and I'm like getting what's at the health food store. But then I really started doing research and going, oh my God, there's a whole other world out there. And then I started to get, I was writing all these distillers and got in samples that were just, it was be a tea tree or bergamot or lavender. And it was like, I had never smelt it before. And so there was a whole other quality to tap into. It's kind of like the wine industry, right? You
Yeah.
could have an amazing, beautiful vintage, a family operation, fourth generation, or you can get your boxed wine with a screw cap situation. And maybe that was even made from a pill. And so essential oils, they can be completely synthetic, just not even real, or they could be semi-real and then added in a component like a menthol, which for many people are like, oh yeah, that's peppermint, but it isn't. It's the isolate. And there's so many ways they fold and refractionate and adulterate. And then even within purity, maybe your cinnamon isn't cinnamon. Most, like 98% of the cinnamon essential oil on the market, just like 98% of the cinnamon in a health food store, is cassia bark and not Cinnamomum xylanicum, if I've got the Latin name right. And that is like, you'll smell it. It'll smell like cinnamon because cassia is very similar. And so you're just not getting real cinnamon. Or, German chamomile is this beautiful blue oil, but a lot of people just use blue tansy, Tanacetum annum. I love blue tansy. It's an amazing oil, but it isn't German chamomile, and German chamomile needs to be German chamomile. So you really want to know, like, where is it coming from? What is the Latin name? What part of the plant was distilled? And we include all of that information. And then we also do our third-party testing. Even though I've had relationships with our distillers, for 20, 30 years, we rarely get new ones because they're just beautiful, tried and true relationships that we really value. But I forgot where I was going with all that. But we put all that information out so that people can really just see the quality. Because if I'm saying anything about essential oils, or if you read about how wonderful they are, or frankincense, it really has to be with a genuine, authentic distillation, or it could actually, do nothing, or at worst, it could be like burning the skin or just
Yeah, we were
irritating it
speaking a
some
lot
way.
about that. I think there was a
Yeah.
Netflix episode that was on essential oils and people that were
Oh, yeah.
getting really sick from essential oils. They were trying to like ingest them and, you
And
know,
you can ingest them, but because most of for forever before, we were even born, essential oils were used and are used for the food and flavor industry.
yeah.
That's the beginning of how there's like warehouses in New Jersey that have drums of essential oils that then they fold, refractionate, and put into the orange juice industry, the liquor industry, the perfume industry. And so the GRAS, generally meaning GRAS, meaning generally recognized as safe. Most of essential oils fall within that category. And if you think of culinary ones, like, can you eat a rose or lavender or cardamom or cinnamon or oregano? Yes. So those are all edible, but what people may not, again, it's got to be pure. It's by the drop. It's so concentrated. 60 rose heads make 1 drop of rose essential oil. So if you want to take a little bit of rose, you just would put a drop. It's a
Yeah.
drop, it's not spoonfuls. That'd be very expensive anyway. And it's a drop in honey or a drop in oil. You don't just like put it down your throat sort of thing. So you can use them and they can be used medicinally. They're great in the mouth. They're good for canker, sores, and cleaning up bacteria and really, healing the gums because they will rejuvenate tissue in ways that most substances just don't.
Oh, it's so interesting, eh? IS Clinical's Active Serum is my top pick for anyone dealing with breakouts, uneven skin tone, or texture concerns. This fast-acting and results-oriented formula is clinically proven to also reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. With a potent blend of ingredients like arbutin, sugarcane extract, bilberry extract, and mushroom extract, it delivers both rapid and long-term results. Just a few drops at night and let the results speak for themselves. If you want to try this product, go to bskinenvie.ca, that's spelled BSKINENVIE.ca, and use code SKINTALKS to get 10% off your first order.
I want to know, like, for somebody who's looking into getting essential oils, what are some key factors to look out for when buying an essential oil to see if it's fake or if it's, like, truly real?
Yes.
What are those factors?
So definitely look like you want to be able to know the Latin name, the part of the plant, what country it came from, and anything else. Maybe there's a gas chromatography reading, but then you just want to smell it. And I would encourage people to smell oils like wherever you are and just smell even ones that aren't good. Get those into because our nose can be like a little scent library. And then you can just see, when I had a store in Queen Street, on Queen Street in the 90s, and we would do like cover up the bottles and have other ones. And then people could really get all the nuances, even, with frankincenses and marjorams, and just see the different, like the quality of the distillation. And then you just get oils.
It, eh?
Yeah.
Your nose will identify when it's.
It will. Yeah. And you'll know it. That's actually. We test things, but really early on, I realized that when I smell, I have a whole just message there. It's like I can just feel a pressure if it's synthetic. You know what I mean? Like, so I can just immediately, like, my nose literally tells me, and we can go test it, but I'll just be like, out.
You just know.
Not that one. Yeah, and it's always accurate.
Yeah. Now, what about like, do they stay? Do they stay a pure essential oil?
Yeah, so they're really neat that way too. So some over time may lose their sparkle, and that's generally just the citruses. They might just be 10 years from now, you open your bottle, it just might be not as sparkly, especially if your little 5 ml bottle was like half empty, and then for 10 years it had like that little bit of air. However, like, they really last forever. They don't go rancid if they're real because there's no lipid in there. It's not a fatty oil. I'm not sure who named essential oils, but they're not an oil. There's no fat, so it's not like an olive oil. If you put a drop on your hands, like, you could still sort of snap your hands. They're volatile compounds, which just means if you left open the cap, they will evaporate. So they're evaporative.
It's more like an alcohol, like.
Yeah, except they don't mix with water.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So that's sort of like, so in the distillation, you'll gather, generally speaking, I mean, each plant's a bit different, but you gather all the plant material, and there's a big vat, an alembic, heat source underneath, which is often maybe just the branches and stuff from the other parts that they're not using. That heat opens the cells in the glands that contain the essential oils, and they escape out of the plant through evaporation. They become a vapor.
Yeah.
And then they rise into the other, these coils that are then cooling.
Yeah.
And then that brings the vapor sort of like back down to earth, so to speak. And then it becomes oil again. And then the water, what was the water in the plant separates out.
Okay.
And so then so you got the essential oil sitting on top, and it won't be as much as the water. If it's rose, that water underneath will be the rose water, and it contains microsoluble components of the essential oil that is nowhere else. Rose water, true rose water, is not just water with some rose in it. It's literally from the distillation. It's called a hydrosol. And then the top is skimmed off. That's the beautiful essential oil, which is just so precious.
So
Yeah, so they
interesting.
will last forever. They don't go rancid. And when they opened up the various Egyptian tombs, and there'd be like gallons of things, like it's kind of crazy how much they had. And there'd
Yeah,
be in
I've heard
alabaster
about that.
jars. Yeah, and they were, opening up, and the spikenard was just, I mean, imagine how
So
beautifully they
old.
would have aged.
Wow.
We actually age some of our stuff too, so
Okay,
that yeah, we have
interesting.
some stuff aging right now.
So, besides the fact that essential oils are so good for the skin, what about the whole like relaxation and mental component to
Like the
essential
overall
oil?
well-being.
The
Yeah,
well-being.
that's again part of their multifaceted. So
Yeah.
if you can't even smell it, you're putting on the skin. They get down to work and they have lots to do. They enter the bloodstream, do their work, and then they leave the body. They don't build up. And then just through even our daily care, if we're using products like Living Libations, then we also can have that, washing the face, even brushing your teeth, and you're getting that beautiful aromatic experience, which is just a nice, kind of pick me up. And then on the level of like meditation, emotion, like if you need to shift things, shift emotions, you could just inhale from the bottle. It doesn't have to be a whole like we're diffusing or whatever. Just
Not a
like
ceremony.
sit, inhale. If it's an essential oil that's okay, neat, you could just put it right under your nose and it will change things because again, those molecules, there's a mental and a emotional response, but there's a real physiological response
Okay.
that is going in and releasing good brain chemicals.
Yeah. Can you give some examples of different
Yeah.
essential oils that have different benefits in terms of the well-being component, like the
Yeah.
mental well-being?
One of the essential oils that was studied quite a bit was bergamot. And in the 1980s at the University of Milan, I can't remember the name of the professor right now, but he studied bergamot a lot, and you can look up those studies. And it was just really quite amazing what it does for depression and uplifting.
Oh, really?
Bergamot is a little tiny orange citrus. So it is in that realm. It's like oh, you know what? It's the smell of Earl Grey tea. So Earl Grey tea, whoever's making Earl Grey tea, they use the bergamot essential oil to saturate the tea, and that's how Earl Grey tea is made. So it's also a familiar smell for a lot of people.
But it
And
doesn't smell citrusy. Did you say it's
no, it's so bergamots are also a really beautiful citrus to use in perfumes because you get that
Yeah.
buoyancy, but without a classic like, is that a citrus?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it doesn't smell citrusy, but anyways,
Yeah,
use
so that's a
bergamot.
really uplifting
it's helping with
one.
like depression, and so
Yes, and like shown in the studies. Then you got like frankincense, which I mean, there's a reason why it's been used in churches. It's like literally got something, it's not at all THC, but it is a similar thing to just chilling the mind a bit and probably making people more receptive to that, like, meditative prayer kind of
focus.
state focus. Yep. Focus. They've done a lot of studies with like peppermint and lemon, even using them in banks, tellers making less mistakes.
Oh,
Rosemary,
wow.
peppermint, lemon, all really good for studying. Even so, it's good for studying and it's good for clarifying the brain, but also even if you're smelling that while you're studying and then you could smell it maybe in the exam, you're just going to have a nice little extra way to help you remember from just the smell. But literally those ones are so good for just, picking you up. I was going to go into congestion, which actually isn't a mental state because I was just thinking of like, and then there's the ones that can, oh my God, to open up the airways and the passages and just to like, if you're just can't smell because it's all plugged up, eucalyptus, rosemary, we have the blends like Immunilum to just open that up. You can put them on a drop on the stove. I mean, not on the stove, but like in a pot, steaming, low steaming, add a few drops, and then you just put a towel over your head and
So
you can
if
have a
you're not
quick.
feeling well, you're congested, you have a cold or sinuses.
Yeah, it's like the
Yeah, okay.
quickest way. And then you could take, a higher dilution and mix it with anything, even olive oil, and just like coat your whole chest,
Okay.
neck, face,
Yeah.
You can diffuse it at night so that you're breathing through that cold. I mean, I remember with my son, kids get congested around teething, so we would always have the diffuser out at that time, and it would just make such a difference. It would be like sleeping or not. Like it was crazy. Like it just is, it's amazing because they're killing
Wow.
airborne bacteria. So they smell so nice and they seem so like lavender and rose, but they're like killing, airborne bacteria, cleaning up like pathogenic activity in the skin and on the mouth. So that's what's so neat about them is they're very glamorous and just hard-working substances.
And so when you talk about like portions of mixtures, like is it always just one drop, like one drop in
You want to think drops like for internally and spot treatment, right? Like
yeah,
because and again, test what is that called? Patch test,
yeah,
especially with the neat. Now there's a lot of like you can never use them neat, but you can. There's a whole host of them that you can put on undiluted, but you've got to, you're not putting
you
on the
have to
whole
know it.
bottle. You know it's a real oil. Now, just because, 99 people can put frankincense on straight and there's no irritation, there's always one person that
Yeah,
just that is going to irritate them. And again, it's not really an allergy, but for that, it's just that that molecule is just rubbing you the wrong way. So always test, but the ones that we work with that you can put on meat are really, the general ones that you can. So peppermint, for example, too, like just having that
yeah.
bottle drops on the back of your neck, their temples if you have a headache. It's amazing because
Oh yeah,
it's
I
like a little
remember
ice
that.
cube.
I remember that, Tash, because
I remember it too. I was going to
when I
ask
was
about the
pregnant with
headaches.
you, like you couldn't take anything in that time. Like I lived in Germany also, which is very,
Yeah,
raise
they
more
got a lot of
natural
oils.
approach.
Yep.
Um, when I used to get really bad headaches a lot when I was pregnant, and so I would just
Mhm.
put the peppermint oil like on the like you said the back of your neck, on my temples,
Yes,
and it helped to relieve.
it really does.
Yeah,
I
Peppermint
remember
on,
I would get
put on eye
headaches
mask.
sometimes, and I would roll
yeah.
the peppermint on my
Yeah, that's
temples.
why we actually have something called Peppermint Pal now, which is a roll-on, and it's like 80% peppermint, but it gives you that just that little, which is crazy. Nobody does products that strong, and then it's just a little bit of lubricant so that you really can have that because sometimes we just need the potency, right?
Yeah.
And so you put that in. Now, generally speaking, then if like topically, if you're making your own things, then it's going to range, which could be anywhere from like a 3 to a 7%. So it's easier to talk in percentages that way rather than drops. But just a handy thing to know is that 20 drops is about a milliliter. Now, I say generally because vetiver is way more viscous than lavender, and there'd be
Yeah.
if we measured the weights, it would throw everything off. But generally, 20 drops is about a milliliter, so it gives you a good ballpark for mixing or just even knowing usage.
Oh,
And
interesting.
what about like you said for there's somebody who I can't remember who it is, but every time I would get a sore throat, they would always recommend oregano
Oregano.
oil.
Yeah. Now again, well, if you buy in the store, like there's some good brands out there, like I think Joy of the Mountain or something, but it's always diluted. So it's usually just 3% in olive oil, which you can I mean, if you just bought a 5 ml bottle of oregano and then I mean, that would last you like years, right? Because then you would just pour 3% into another bottle, add some olive oil, oregano, cinnamon, clove. There's others, but those three you would never put on undiluted, and you would never drop a drop undiluted into there because the mucus that your whole inside of your mouth is even way more sensitive than the outside of our skin, and you don't want to burn anything on the way down. But in diluted, no problem. And yes, I mean, talk about like killing strep throat. It's
Well,
amazing.
you
But you
can
can also
feel it. Like when you take oregano oil, I bought it
yeah
once for that, and I'll
yeah.
tell you, like I put it underneath your tongue, and your sensorial experience around that is like on fire.
It
I
is, and it's a
well,
good
you
brain
feel it.
boost as well. But we have products like the healthy gum drops,
Yeah,
the hot berry immunoloom. Those are amazing for the sore throat, anything going on internally, and you can use them internally as well. And we also sort of related, we have this thing called Nose Glow, and it's this device that sends red light, and there's different attachments. So there's one that can pin the red light right to the back of your throat. There's one that you can put right up in your nose, and you can put a little bit of essential oil on the top. And then there's ear ones you can send in, and that really helps with any kind of ear, nose, throat issues. It's pretty amazing to combine the power of the essential oil with red light.
oh,
Amazing.
I've never even heard about that. So that's very interesting.
It's new.
And you
Yeah.
have this device?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
That is
Very
very
cool.
cool.
So let's
I
get
want
into
to
a little bit of Tash, did you want to ask something first about that?
No, I wanted to know more, like, because we spoke about how it's good for like the skin, how it's good for like your overall well-being, but I kind of want to hone in a little bit more on how essential oils can, let's say, help with like concerns as of like anti-aging and like
Transformation.
rejuvenation of the skin and like like concerns that we go through as we get older, and how essential oils could be beneficial for that.
And which ones?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, obviously.
specifically
Well,
which ones?
everything we're using in our skincare, are the oils for anti-aging and stuff. And do we have one serum called like anti-aging serum? No, because like every single thing we make is gonna put you ahead in the anti-aging situation. Um, and that's something that we're testing all the time. Like my husband and I, we get 3 times a year, we test 900,000 DNA methylation sites in our body to check in on cellular, immune, and skin aging. So we are able to see that what we're doing is working because we're able to, yeah, like things are kind of reversing. And then our rate of aging, for example, right now I'm down to like about 7.5 months for every 12 months. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, part of this rejuvenation Olympic. So we love to test like what we're doing, and that's sort of what I've been doing, for the past 30 years with libations and making sure that, we're always leading edge on that relationship with how we're caring for our body and
Yeah.
longevity. And it really isn't necessarily about living longer, but health, like a health span, even as opposed to a lifespan. And so a lot of what we can do for our skin in terms of like quote unquote anti-aging is like, first of all, just stopping the things that are aging it. So if you just stopped a lot of the ingredients and topicals that are messing with the microbiome, for example, and if you just switch to like olive oil, like a true olive oil for the rest of your life, you would be far better off. So there's that, because there's a lot of what we're putting on topically that might in the moment plump, but it could be causing long-term drought within the cell because the
Hmm.
cell is then responding to like things with glycerin. There's a thing called osmolarity within the cell, and also if we even use glycerin as a like a yoni vaginal lubricant, studies show that because it's watery based, the cell will then express its water. So you have that momentary plumping for long-term drought. And then studies show that because of that drought, the cells within the vaginal wall are shriveling up, look like cellular raisins underneath the microscope. And then, of course, that can create an environment that is even more inviting to STDs and that kind of thing. So that's like inside look at like what we can do, what we're doing topically that is sort of messing with the microbiome. And there's so many ingredients that are petroleum derived, like that we don't, that you wouldn't even recognize as sort of a petrol because the name's so different. But there's no cell in our body that's like parched for petroleum. So every drop, every ingredient matters. We don't think of our products in terms of like, here's our active key ingredients, and then we're going to keep quiet about the other stuff inside. It's the whole thing. The
Hmm.
whole thing's active. If we're using jojoba, it's because it's so rich in ceramides. And so what the essential oils do is they're acting on the body in real time, and they're also cell signaling. So they're actually able
They're
to kind of,
teaching, right? It's like
what's
teaching.
that?
It's kind of like a
Yeah,
teaching
teaching and,
process.
and communicating. They're saying, hey,
Yeah.
like, let's get
Yeah.
things kind of active. Let's regenerate here. And so it's just super cool because if you think of some of the deeper issues that we could have with our skin, which is, hyperpigmentation or then getting into like a dysbiotic state where the cells are getting abnormal and maybe going down another pathway. Studies show that, and this I do write about in my book because I can't put this all on the website because we can't talk about how amazing sandalwood really is because we can only talk about it, you know what I mean? We can't put the
In
studies
terms
and
of
all that.
Yeah.
hydration, yeah.
Yeah, because it's a cosmetic, so we can't go on and on about it. But that's why we have the book. So it like things like geranium and sandalwood, if there is true like damage, cellular damage, it will stabilize and reverse it. So it's really, they can really take on the tasks of our skin in a way that I haven't seen, especially like a collective group of ingredients really be able to do. And again, that thing where they can help regenerate collagen and then prevent the enzymes, they're not positive enzymes, that break down elastin and collagen. I mean, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
And then there's ones that
Okay.
contain even a natural retinol, like mastic
Yeah.
and rose hips.
So what is mastic?
Mastic is a gum, like a sap. So frankincense, myrrh, mastic, they're all sap from inside the tree. So how they're harvested is like an incision will be made on the bark, and then the sap oozes out. It dries in the sun, and then it's collected. And so maybe you've even seen like just like the tears of
Yeah.
frankincense or mastic. They're like little, and you can
Okay.
chew them. That's the original chewing gum. And yeah, they just have really fascinating properties because they're a resin, right? So within all the essential oils, then we've got like the flower petals that give up their essences. It depends where the essential oil resides in the plant. So for like in a eucalyptus family, it's in the leaves. For lavender and rose, it's up in the flowers. Jasmine, they generally are picked before dawn, or the Jasmine grandiflorum, because that's when the concentration of the essential oil is in the petal the most. So then they're picked at dawn so you can really capture that. So
So
they're
interesting.
all different. And then there's the sap family, which is, the frankincense and the resins. And they seem to have just such a affinity for our skin.
Oh, that's
I,
really
I have a
cool.
question that's like a little bit, I'm taking a little bit of a right turn here.
That's all right.
Because Natasha and I, or I don't know if it was Natasha and I think it might have been my brother also. We were talking about dentistry,
Mm,
crazy. And I have this, not this theory, but I just, because my brother had a sore tooth over the holidays, like really bad. He needs to go for a root canal and had to be put
oh,
on antibiotics and stuff. And I said, tooth pain is one of the worst things that you can experience.
it is.
It's like a chronic pain that is so intense. And but I was thinking about, many, many years ago before there was like dentists, and how do they manage pain in terms of those types of things? Because, there's a saying that people really have a hard time with their dentists, or dentists, or there's a lot of fear associated with it. And I feel like it might be generational trauma that comes down from the past of having to experience extractions and stuff that were exceptionally painful, right? But I do think that there must have been something in nature that
Clove
people
is
would
used
use
a lot.
typically, right, for
Yeah.
as a anti, like anti,
Analgesic.
but also an anesthetic.
Yeah.
Would you know that?
Rose, peppermint, and clove, they all have like this little bit of an analgesic property, like this numbing. They'll numb the skin. And so that's why all three are in our healthy gumdrops, our happy
Okay.
gumdrops. Clove is in the yogi one. So clove is really good. And you could just even get clove and dilute it. If you want to make a strong dilution, but you got to dilute it because it is hot and it will, your tissue will get
Burned.
burnt, yeah, inside your
Irritated.
mouth. And so, yeah, but if you put it on a really strong concentrate, again, it could be 50-50 in that example. Just give it a little bit of lube and it really helps with pain. But guess what else? It's cleaning. It's antibacterial, it's antifungal. So it's speaking to that necrotic nest of bacteria that
Hmm.
is built up, which is probably why you need a root canal. But really, people shouldn't be getting root canals. I do write about that in my book because it sounds like a good idea, but actually it traps everything into the tooth. You think they've sterilized it because they put in cement into the pulp chamber, but every tooth has 300 meters of microscopic tubes, which can never be sterilized. So after you have a root canal, every time you chew, you are squirting bacteria into the bloodstream. And because the tooth sealed off, nothing can get to it. So you can't get the white blood cells cleaning it up. So if they're truly, and then some root canal teeth candidates don't need a root canal. Your dentist may have misjudged it. If it truly is a root canal candidate, then what you want to do is have a real, you have to have an extraction. Then they have to clear out the periodontal ligament because there could be jaw rot. And then you can just leave it. I have a back molar that I have to leave. Obviously, if it's the front, you want to do something about it. And you could do a bridge, but then you have to shave off good tooth on either side. So then there's implants, but you have to, which is not common, you have to do zirconium or ceramic, which has shown like 30 years use in Europe as to be the most biocompatible. Otherwise, the very common one is titanium, which is a very toxic metal, and then that'll create a whole other issue.
Crazy.
There's a lot that you could get into when it
Oh yeah,
comes to like medicine and the way that we do things and the
totally.
alternatives for stuff, right?
Like most, if it's a really truly good dentist, they won't do root canals anymore. And there was a whole documentary on Netflix about that,
I'll have to
actually.
check that out.
But they had to take it off. It was removed. It was probably about 6 years ago. It's
I
still
remember
around.
that.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, I think it's the bread and butter of the ADA, root canals, right? So,
Yeah, I don't know. I had one once in my life. It wasn't a pleasant experience, but I mean, I don't know. I don't have like enough knowledge about it to have a very strong opinion on it.
oh, for sure. I mean, this is like just something I've now like I'm been studying since 2009 and like working with dentists, writing books on it, keeping my so it's like a deep subject for me. That's the only reason why I know about it.
Okay.
Otherwise, no. We generally don't know about our teeth, but that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to know because as a kid, when you go to the dentist once a year and it's blah blah blah, and it's like, what are we doing every day? So that we understand what's going on and we're not just like handing it over and not knowing what's going on because
Yeah.
we do have to take care of our teeth each day and not just sort of wait for the dentist to be like,
It's
oh, all
yeah.
this is,
It's
yeah,
like your skin and everything else. Your internal, external, it's everything. It's like a daily thing that you have to take care of because otherwise,
yeah,
I want to go switch back to your book. Could you tell me the
yes.
name of your book?
Yeah, there's Renegade Beauty,
Renegade.
which is, that's very juicy. I think it's like 400 pages. There's 500 citations. There's a lot of science in there as well. There's a very juicy dental chapter, which includes things like root canals. And then what I'm about to say is like, so I also have a dental book, but you could even just start with Renegade Beauty because I think the dental chapter is juicy enough. And then I have my other book, Holistic Dental Care, which came out in 2013. That's in 5 languages, and they're both available on Audible as well.
Okay.
Very cool. Good
Yeah.
for you.
Good for you. Very passionate about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's like there's more information now, but like we just had such a gap in like really trying to, understanding like how to really care for our bodies, like where we can look at what was done in the ancient times, look at the inherent beautiful biology of our design, like so we can step out of the way, kind of take our modern perspective off and just be like, well, how is the body supposed to work, right? Without
Yeah.
glycerin or all these new things that we've made. Like,
Yeah.
how does it take care? Like, what's the system inside our bodies that takes care of our teeth without a toothbrush? And like, what are we doing to have that system work? So that on one level, if you don't brush your teeth one day, it doesn't fall apart sort of thing. So like, what can we do to activate our biology and our bodies to get into that? Because what are we doing in modern life that sort of separated us from the body taking care of itself? There's so much that thank God we don't have to do. We don't have to go to bed at night and ask, that our liver function and that our blood flow and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot that's already, happening automatically, but we don't want to get away in the way of that and like thwart it by like, throwing on a poisonous lotion and thinking it's going to be the anti-aging miracle that it isn't.
Interesting.
Very
Very interesting.
interesting,
I like that.
Nadine.
I like that approach for sure.
Yeah, it's very
It's
interesting. I mean, we
logical.
could talk about this for a long time, but I think we covered the basics. I'm definitely going to buy your book. I really want to buy the book.
We'll send you one. I'll have Cam send you one. I can't believe you don't have it.
No, I really want to see that because I find that fascinating. And I think the most important thing is, the message that I get from everything that we've talked about today is really to ask questions on why we're doing what we're doing and, not
Yeah.
just only doing what we're told to do, so actually ask questions around it because the body has
Yeah.
its own ecosystem, like you said, and it's certainly a topic that we could chat a lot longer about,
Yeah, we
So
want to work with the body and
yeah,
in that effort, hopefully you get to a little bit like less effort
yeah,
because
Yeah.
it's like happening. And so we don't have to be like,
Always
because there's
fighting.
another approach where I think our approach to beauty can also sometimes be like, you know, like out damn spot and popping a pimple and like just getting very pokey and picky and, you know, just letting all that go and really working with the body.
Excellent.
Yeah, instead of against it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been
Thank
a
you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's very informative, and I look forward to discovering more about Renegade Beauty. I want to get into that a little bit.
We'll send a copy your way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and follow us on social at Skin Talks Pod. We'll see you next week.